Good evening. My name is James Kirylo, and I'm an associate professor of education at the University of South Carolina. And I'm going to share a story with you that comes from my book, Teaching with Purpose. I related an account when I was a second grade teacher some years ago. One of my students, who I'll call Anthony, asked me to come to one of his football practices. So I did go, but he did not know that I was there until the very end of it, as the red-orange October sky was turning into twilight, a scene that I vividly remember. And when he finally saw me on the sideline, he excitedly bolted into my direction as his large helmet was sort of bobbling up and down in his head. And when he got to where I was standing, he looked up at me and peered through the eye opening of his helmet with his tender eyes greeting mine, and he said excitedly, but calmly, "You came." "Of course," I said. "I wouldn't have it any different." And then he ran off to his teammates. He was happy. I was gratified because he knew that I came to that practice especially for him. Now, this particular moment took place nearly 25 years ago. Yet, as I share this brief account with you, I still burst with a great sense of affection, as I do when I think about the numerous other singular moments during my 18-year career as a K-12 educator. The spontaneous twinkle in Anthony's eyes and the warmth in my heart ignited a human connection. Truly, the nourishment that makes teaching meaningful is the humanity of it all. You see, teachers teach children, not a subject matter or a discipline, which is not a question of semantics. If I can say it this way, it was not a football practice that I came to attend, but rather it was Anthony, who happened to be my student, who I came to watch play football. Now, long before I heard or read about Parker Palmer and his insightful book, The Courage to Teach, I have always reminded myself that I teach who I am. Palmer puts it this way: we teach who we are. That is, the more that we're in touch, the more that we're in tune with our motives, our moods, our biases, our strengths, our weaknesses, and the theory and knowledge that inform our practice, the more likelihood that we are able to make sense of the tangled complexity that's inherent in the teaching and learning process. In other words, knowing thyself, to borrow from Socrates, is an important agency to know and realize the other. And for parents, in vulnerability and in hope and in expectation, they turn over their most treasured gifts, their own children, into the hands of the teacher, which assumes what? It assumes that the teacher is desirous of being there, and it assumes that the teacher has the best developmental interests of each and every child in that classroom from right where they are. The simple act of me watching Anthony practice football says to him, "I care," which enkindles a shared happiness in which the sport brings to him. It also sends a message to him, despite him struggling in school: I'm not giving up on you. And it conveys a message of hope as he's dealing with his own weary self-concept. And finally, it illuminates a moment of love in a world where his father is relatively absent, laboring to make ends meet, and further intensified by the passing away of Anthony's mother. And that is only part of Anthony's story, not to mention the individual stories of the other 24 students in the class whose lives are more or less complicated than that of Anthony. So, what this simple but very real story tells us is that teaching is something that we need to be contextually attuned, and it's an affair of the heart, which is intimately connected to the autobiographical, the theoretical, the pedagogical or instructional, if you will, the curricular, the cultural, the economical, and certainly the spiritual. In the final analysis, and in its most simple terms, teaching with purpose is a process. It's an effort that completely understands that ultimately education is about entering into relationships. And to the qualitative degree that we nurture and cultivate those relationships is to the likely degree that we will foster inspirational classrooms where our students, where our young people, where our children will fall in love with learning. Thank you.